In part 1 of our complete story recap of the God of War series, we spoke about the events that serve as the backstory for Kratos' story, before diving into the events portrayed in God of War Ascension. In part 2, we will take a look at the Spartan's exploits during his 10-year service to gods in Chains of Olympus. The Furies are dead. Kratos has freed himself from the oath that bound him to Ares, the god of war, and in order to rid himself of the nightmares that haunt him about the death of his family, the man known as the Ghost of Sparta has pledged himself to the service of the gods of Olympus. At the beginning of Chains of Olympus, roughly 5 years have passed since all this happened, and Kratos has continued to be a loyal servant to the gods, hoping that by doing their bidding and acting as their champion, they will eventually reward him by forgiving his sins. As Chains of Olympus kicks off, Kratos is given another task by the Olympians. He is dispatched to the city of Attica, which is being invaded by a veritable Persian army, and tasked with helping the city defend against this invasion. Kratos quickly makes his way to the city, battling against Persian forces. In Attica, he faces off against a number of daunting enemies, such as the Persian king himself, as well as a massive basilisk, and he is successfully able to best them both in combat, as is expected from a man of his brutal talents. But while he succeeds in defeating the Persians, it quickly becomes clear to Kratos that things are going to take a turn for the worse, and escalate into something that he isn't prepared for. As he defeats the basilisk, Kratos witnesses something strange to say the least. He looks on as the sun literally falls from the sky, plummeting into the horizon and engulfing the world in total darkness. All that remains of it is a dim light still glowing on the horizon. Unable to explain this unnatural phenomenon, he decides to make his way towards that dim light in order to investigate these strange occurrences. His journey takes him through the city of Marathon, and as he travels towards the source of the dim light in the horizon, Kratos realizes that the darkness left behind in the wake of the sun has engulfed the entire land, while a dark fog now presses in everywhere ominously. Kratos eventually reaches the source of the light and finds himself at the temple of Helios, the god of the sun. He spots the sun chariot, the vessel of which Helios flies the sun around the earth, lying abandoned by the temple. Something is clearly very, very wrong. It is at this point that Kratos comes across a statue of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and the daughter of Zeus. Athena speaks to Kratos through her statue, and she fills him in on just what exactly is going on. She tells him that Helios has mysteriously disappeared, and with the god of the sun gone, the sun is obviously nowhere to be found either. She then tells him that Morpheus, the god of slumber and dreams, has used Helios' absence to his advantage, and put the gods of Olympus into a deep slumber, essentially putting the safety of the entire world in jeopardy. The dark, oppressive fog that now covers the land is also Morpheus' doing. You can probably guess what happens next. Athena tells Kratos that he must find Helios and retrieve him in order to restore the sun back into the sky, and thus release the gods of Olympus from Morpheus' hold, and put a stop to his current grasp over the world. Seeing as he's bound to the service of the gods of Olympus, Kratos sees no option but to acquiesce Athena's requests. He agrees to rescue Helios and venture forth into the temple before him to better understand what he needs to do next. As he does so, he hears a haunting melody that he did not expect to hear, least of all in the situation he currently finds himself in. The melody he hears is one that he recognizes, one that is very close to his heart. It is a tune that his daughter used to play on her flute, and as he hears this tune, horrifying memories flash before him once again. Memories of him in that temple, him in a murderous rampage, him unknowingly killing his own wife and daughter. Not knowing or understanding why his nightmares are choosing to manifest themselves this way, of all the ways, Kratos decides to ignore these new occurrences the best way he can and continues onward. In the temple of Helios, he runs into Eos, the sister of Helios. She promises to him that if he rescues her brother, the gods of Olympus will rid him of the nightmares that continue to torment him. And what must he do to rescue the sun god? He must travel to the depths of the underworld, the realm of the dead, to its deepest reaches within the place known as Tartarus, the place where the most evil souls of the dead are sent to endure a never-ending torment. And why must he go there? Because it is there that Helios is being held captive by the titan known as Atlas, who was imprisoned by Zeus long ago, with chains binding him to the pits of Tartarus. Let's pause here for a minute to talk about an event that is going to be very important as we move forward with this series, the Titanomachy, also known as the Great War. The gods of Olympus rule as kings of the world, but it had not always been this way. Before the gods, it was the Titans who ruled over the world. The king of the Titans was a Titan named Kratos, and Rhea gave birth to the original 6 Olympians, including the likes of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Kratos, though, feared that his rule would be short-lived. A prediction had been made by beings known as the Sisters of Fate, who we'll be speaking about in greater detail in the future. This prediction foretold the downfall of Kratos, that the Titan and his reign would be brought to an end by his own children, who would eventually overthrow him and claim his throne. This, the prediction said, would be a continuation of the cycle of sons defeating their fathers, just as Kratos had overthrown his father, Uranus, and just as Zeus later goes on to grow fearful of one of his own sons overthrowing him as well. Fearful of the prediction coming true, Kratos decided to deal with it in the most bizarre way imaginable. He swallowed his children whole, and they remained in his belly for many years, alive but imprisoned. However, Rhea, their mother, Kratos' wife, couldn't bear the loss of all of her children. She tricked Kratos into thinking that he had indeed swallowed all of his children whole, but conspired to save the life of her eldest, the boy named Zeus. Zeus lived in hiding for all of his formative years under the care of the Titan Gaia, his grandmother and mother of all Titans. She taught him everything she knew, and he grew up to become a knowledgeable, cunning man and warrior. However, he harbored a burning rage against his father, and he plotted his vengeance against the Titans. We'll speak more of how the subsequent battle went about how exactly Zeus freed his brothers and sisters, and how they together defeated the Titans. But once the war was over and the Olympians had firmly displaced the Titans as the gods of Greece, Zeus banished the Titans that still remained alive into exile and imprisonment, sending them to live out the rest of their long imprisoned lives in various horrific places across the world. The Titan Atlas, Zeus banished to the deepest pits of Tartarus, where he was bound to forever carry the earth on his shoulders. And that is where he is even now, where he holds Helios, the god of the sun. And that is where Kratos must now go. Kratos travels to the underworld, and there he meets with Charon, the ferryman who transports the souls of the dead on the river Styx to the underworld and beyond. When Charon and Kratos converse, the former observes just how similar the two are, forever bound to be slaves of the gods of Olympus. Kratos, however, has no time for such insults. He tells Charon that he needs passage on his ship to sail across the Styx and make it to the depths of the underworld. Charon, however, tells Kratos that it is not his time yet. He denies the Ghost of Sparta passage. Kratos, however, is not going to back down so easily, and the two engage in battle, with Kratos attempting to wrestle control of the ship, but the ferryman emerges victorious. He picks up the unconscious body of the Spartan and throws him off board, and after a long drop, he lands right into the deepest pits of Tartarus. And it is there that he witnesses something truly momentous and potentially devastating. The chains binding the Titan Atlas to the pits of Tartarus break, releasing him from captivity. Realizing that the stakes are higher than ever and that he needs to go about his task more urgently, Kratos fights his way up through Tartarus, and after an arduous climb, manages to claw his way back out. Once again, he faces off against Charon, the ferryman, and this time, things turn out differently. Kratos destroys Charon, killing him, and takes control of his ship. He steers the ship across the Styx, following the light of Helios on the horizon until finally, in the distance, he spots the temple of Persephone, the queen of the underworld and the wife of Hades. He sees something else too, something that shakes him to his very core. On the shorelines of the river Styx, by the structure of the temple, Kratos spots the figure of his daughter Calliope. He gives chase, following her as she makes her way into the temple. Once he enters, he is unable to locate her. Who he finds instead is Persephone herself. And here, the queen of the underworld gives him a choice that tears the Ghost of Sparta apart. She tells Kratos that Calliope is in the Elysium Fields, which is, of course, the ancient Greek mythology's rough equivalent of heaven or paradise. Persephone tells Kratos that he can see and be with his daughter again, and that it is here that she gives him that choice. If he wants to enter the Elysium Fields to be with Calliope again, he will have to forego all the weapons, powers, and abilities that the gods have given him. Kratos doesn't even need to think twice before making his decision. He willingly lets go of all his weapons and magical powers, after which he enters Elysium, and there he finally reunites with Calliope, the daughter he had lost to his own fury and greed to power 5 years ago. The ghost of Sparta cannot know happiness, and the world continues to find ways to make him carry on with his tortured existence. Persephone arrives on the scene and tells Kratos that he doesn't quite grasp the full extent of what exactly is going on. It turns out that she has been working with Atlas this entire time, that it was the two of them who abducted Helios in order to put the other gods into a slumber. And what is their plan exactly? To destroy the pillar of the world, the pillar upon which the earth stands, and as a result, bring the destruction of the world, thus killing the gods of Olympus. Atlas, being a Titan, has obvious reasons for wanting to do that, but why does Persephone want to kill her fellow gods? There's a lot of ways to answer that, for which we would have to go into great detail about ancient Greek mythology, so rather than doing that, let's just give you a brief explanation. Long ago, Persephone, daughter of Zeus, was abducted by his brother, her uncle Hades, lord of the underworld, and forced into a marriage with him. And she has been held captive in the underworld to keep her bound to this marriage ever since. Now, we don't claim to be experts on Greek mythology, so by all means, correct us if we're wrong here. Embittered by her father's and her husband's betrayal, and to free herself from her imprisonment, Persephone wants to bring about the destruction of the pillar of the world and, in turn, the world itself, to both enact her vengeance upon the gods, as well as kill herself to be free from her situation. And she's used Calliope as the perfect bait to trick Kratos into voluntarily opting out of standing in her way. While he was letting go of all of his powers and abilities, Atlas was carrying out the plan he and Persephone had been working on, by using the powers of the sun god Helios to bring about the destruction of the pillar. Kratos realizes that if he doesn't put a stop to him before the pillar is completely destroyed, it will bring about the destruction of the entire world and everything in it, including himself and Calliope. In a heart-wrenching moment, he realizes that once again he has to abandon his daughter forever, that he has to forgo his deepest desire of being with her again. He pushes Calliope away, even as she continues to cling on to him in anguish, letting go of her one final time. He then kills the souls roaming about in the fields of Elysium, thus regaining the powers he had foregone, and enraged at the huge sacrifice he has once had to make again, he charges at Persephone. She takes her true form, sprouting wings and an armor of black, and the Queen of the Underworld and the Ghost of Sparta engage in an epic, bloody battle. The final boss fight of Chains of Olympus is a very memorable one, as Kratos squares off in a sweepingly, thrilling, and arduous battle against both Persephone and Atlas, as both try at the same time to bring down the Ghost of Sparta. During the battle, Kratos successfully manages to take the chains that once bound Atlas to the deepest pits of the underworld and uses them to chain the Titan back to Tartarus, with the weight of the world once again literally on his shoulders. Having taken care of Atlas, Kratos then turns his attention to Persephone. The Queen of the Underworld tries to sway him with every trick at her disposal. She tries to convince him to go back to the fields to be with his dead daughter, but when she realizes that her words have no effect, they engage in a battle to the death on top of the pillar of the world. As you can probably guess, Kratos emerges victorious, finally managing to kill Persephone. As she dies though, she taunts Kratos that the suffering he so desperately seeks solace from will never end. Her body then explodes, causing the pillar to sever and explode, leaving the bound and chained Atlas the only thing still holding the world aloft. And that brings an end to the harrowing battle, with Kratos once again having had to pay the greatest price of all. Atlas warns Kratos that he doesn't yet understand what the gods of Olympus have planned for him, and then ominously warns him that they will meet again. They do indeed meet again a few years down the road, but let's not talk about that just yet. Kratos finally frees Helios, returning him and his sun chariot back to the sky, thus restoring normal order, dispelling the fog and slumber of Morpheus, and completing the task that was given to him by Athena. In the final sequence of the game, Kratos rides across the sky on the sun chariot. Though weak from the battle that he just won, he falls off. His unconscious body plummets towards the ground, towards the very top of the Suicide Bluffs, a collection of hills and mountains overlooking the Aegean Sea, and also the highest point in all of Greece. This location is going to be quite important as we move forward with the series, so make sure you keep it in mind. For now though, let's get back to it. Right before Kratos crashes into the top of the peak, his fall is broken by Athena and Helios. They carefully settle his unconscious form on the ground, and the two gods then look over him. Talking with each other, they praise the work he has done, and with that, they walk away. Having rescued Helios and made sure that Atlas doesn't escape his prison, Kratos has obviously won some favor with the gods of Olympus, but his servitude to them is not yet over. We pick things up again 5 years later, at the beginning of the very first God of War game, released on the PlayStation 2 back in 2005. As the gods of Olympus give him one final objective, one that brings him head-to-head against his former master, Ares, the god of war himself. And that's it for part 2. When we return with part 3, we'll talk about the events of God of War, the first game in the series, and the trials Kratos faces in the Temple of Pandora, before finally coming up in a climactic confrontation with Ares. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.